This video will be about charting synthesis prompts. This is an exercise that you should do before the AP English language exam, and I would say that you should do it as often as necessary so that you get very good at it and you can do it quickly. So you'll find that the synthesis prompt is similar. Question number 1, the synthesis, is very similar to question number 3, the open-ended, in that they are both going to ask you to take a position on an issue. So what is the difference between those two questions? And I would say that there are two primary differences. Question number 1, the synthesis, is going to ask you about a topic that you've probably never thought about before. It's going to be a topic that you've probably never had a conversation about in your entire life, and it'll probably be a topic that, quite frankly, you find boring. Question number 3, the open-ended or the argumentative prompt, is usually going to be on a topic that's probably a lot more relevant to your life, and it's probably going to be on a topic that you have had some conversation about. Take the disobedience prompt as an example. Do I really think that you've ever sat around and had a conversation about how maybe being disobedient every now and then is beneficial to your life and helps you grow? No, I don't think that. But I do think that you've sat around and maybe talked about or thought to yourself about how breaking rules every now and then is actually the right thing to do. So question number 3 tends to be much more applicable to real life than perhaps question number 1. The other huge difference is that question number 3 gives you nothing to build your textual evidence off of. That's why we learned about the CHORS acronym. You have to come up with everything on your own. Whereas question number 1, the synthesis, will give you 6 or 7 sources to build your argument from. So for the purposes of this assignment, you will be charting the 2019 prompt, which was about wind farms, the 2017 prompt, which was about public libraries, 2014, which was about college cost, and the 2013 prompt, which was about memorials. Now, it's not always going to be a simple for or against. For example, if you read the wind farms prompt carefully, they're not asking you to be for or against the construction of wind farms. They're asking you what are the most important considerations that a person should consider when going forth with wind farms. So it's not always a simple for or against. So you do want to be careful about how you perceive the question being asked. So on the grid, when you're charting, the first 2 things that I want you to chart are the definition of the word, what they mean by it, and then the question that's being asked. So this is the first page of the eminent domain prompt that I used as an example in your chart. The first page of the synthesis exam the synthesis essay is going to look very similar every time you look at a different one. They will always have this bold-faced directions at the top. They will always read the exact same way. Then there will be 3 paragraphs. The first and second paragraphs usually set the prompt up. The third paragraph is going to read the exact same way on every single prompt. And then you get a listing of sources. Both the definition of eminent domain and the question being asked about eminent domain will be found on this page and this page alone. You do not need to go deeper and look at the sources to find the definition or the question. So when you look at wind farms, which obviously is probably a word that you don't need defined nearly as much as you might need eminent domain defined. When you look at wind farms, though, the definition of wind farms and the question being asked, that's going to be found on this very first page. After that, you get multiple sources. And for the 2018 eminent domain, there were 6 sources that stretched across 7 pages. That's a lot of reading. And so one of the things that you're going to want to do, we want to find as many ways as possible to save time. Remember that you'll have 135 minutes to write 3 timed writings, and that's going to stretch you, and we want to figure out ways that we can maybe save some time, right? So one of the ways to save time is to get good at recognizing the position that a source is going to take. Is the source going to be positive? Is it going to be negative? Or is it going to be neutral? Another way to look at that might be, is it going to be for? Is it going to be against? Or is it going to be neutral? I think that you can get to a point where you might be able to look at all 6 sources in about 1 minute and decide if they're positive, negative, or neutral. I don't think you can necessarily do that today, but I hope that by the time we take the exam, you will be able to do that. So why will that save you time? Why isn't that costing you a minute? Because you might not have to read all 6 sources, right? The prompt is always going to ask you to use 3 sources, at least 3. So maybe you want to use 4, or maybe you just want to use 3. There's absolutely no reason to use all 6. So how long does it take to read one of these sources? Well, I would say probably a good 3 to 5 minutes. So if you can skip a couple of sources, you can suddenly gain 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes. That's significant in a 135-minute time period. So here's the chart that you're filling out, and you'll see that I filled out the 2018, and I simply have the definition of eminent domain, which I lifted off of that first page, the question that is being asked, which I lifted off that first page, and then each source and whether it is positive or negative about eminent domain. And let's be honest, do you really think that I'm going to check 79 students 6 boxes each on whether or not you are absolutely wholly correct in your positive, negative, or neutral labeling? I'm not. I hope that you will do this assignment with some integrity, and I hope that you will go through and do your best. But as far as reading every single source, every word from every source, I think that that would be a waste of your time. So I hope that this video does a good job of introducing you to the synthesis essay and at least getting you ready to do what I would consider step 1 prior to writing. Thanks, everybody.